Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Living Differently on Purpose. We've assembled our ULA life coaches, and they're going to be talking to you tonight about blockers. And no, I'm not talking about the defensive line of the Arizona Cardinals. I'm talking about things that might be stopping you from doing what you know you need to do, or maybe doing what you really want to do. Things like fear or guilt or anger, maybe self-sabotage or laziness, or maybe that evil one, envy. Or maybe it's just simply a lack of focus. So we're going to go through all these tonight and kind of tell you some things that you can do to overcome those things that are stopping you, those things that are blocking you. We call those ULA blockers. And we're so glad that you're here with us tonight. Our first coach is Gina, and she's going to talk to us about fear. Gina, take it away.
Fear. Oh my goodness. This is probably the number one blocker that we all face in our lives. And when I think about the blocker of fear, I really tried to think about, where does fear stem from? So when I kind of looked back at my life. Growing up, our parents tell us, be careful, don't do that, you're going to get hurt. So we automatically start to fear being hurt. When we're born, we fear two things: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Everything besides that is a learned fear. So as we get a little bit older, we start to have emotional fears, fear of not being liked, fear of not being accepted, the fear of failure, even the fear of success. There's so many different fears, and fear will stop us dead in our tracks. It is debilitating, and it is so scary when you are facing something that is fearful, because it's the unknown. And so many of us do not want to go into the unknown waters because we don't know what we're going to face when we get there. I remember when we started becoming ULA life coaches, we had to, well, we didn't have to, but a lot of the coaches were doing introduction videos on Facebook. And I had never done a Facebook Live, and I thought, this is going to be no big deal. And I remember holding the phone, and it probably took me 20 tries of ready, set, go, ready, set, go. I couldn't do it. It was so scary, and I was shaking, and I could hear it in my voice, and I just thought, why can't I do this? It was so scary. Obviously, a few tries, I'm getting a little bit better, but it's still a scary thing to do. What is the opposite of fear, and what's going to help us overcome fear is the lovely accelerator of passion. When I think about passion, I'm picturing like a Disney movie where God takes this little tiny light and he places it inside of us when we're babies, and it's our purpose, and it's our job as people to grow that light and let our passion and our purpose shine. And it's kind of like fear is on one side and passion is on the other. And it's almost like a spiritual battle. The devil and God telling you, I've placed something amazing inside of you. I've created you for greatness. Now you just have to face the fear and do it. And then the devil over here telling, nope, you can't do it. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. It's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The problem is, so many people listen to fear, and they do not pursue the things that were placed inside of them. I've always heard that the richest place is the cemetery because it is so full of amazing ideas and books that were never written, and all of the things that people had, these amazing, amazing ideas, and they were so excited about them. And it was the thing that kept them up at night, and they worked so hard, but they didn't show it to the world because it wasn't perfect. So if we sit around and wait for perfection, we will never, ever move. Nothing will ever happen because perfect doesn't exist. You have to show your true self. You have to show your vulnerability. This is how people are going to get to know you. This is how people are going to love you. And if you think that it's scary, think about so many times I see people on Facebook when I'm scared and I say, oh my gosh, and they're probably scared to death. And I say, oh my gosh, she was so brave. She was so brave. That was so awesome. And so it's fun. And I put myself in that. And I say, well, maybe someone's thinking I'm brave and I can inspire somebody else to be brave as well. So I'm just saying, when you feel the fear, you have to remember what you're passionate for. And you have to remember, sometimes you have to rediscover the passion. You have to go back to the beginning. Why did you start? You have to have a balanced emotional state. You can't be upset and angry. You have to really focus on your life and what you want. You have to read and become knowledgeable about different things and ways to, get around different things. You have to be a part of a community like ULA, where we're constantly talking positive and we're pouring into you. You have to be patient in the journey because there's going to be ups and downs when it comes to your passion. You're going to feel it one day and the next day you're not. And you have to embrace the journey. It's really fun. It's amazing when you start to really overcome your fears, and then you can look back and say, oh my gosh, I did it. I did it. And it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. So that's what I want to say about fear and passion. Fear is so scary. I know it 100%. I have lived most of my life, honestly, in fear. And ULA has completely, well, I'm not going to say completely, has really helped me overcome that. And so I'm forever grateful. And it's also given me a completely new passion in my life that I'm pursuing, and I'm having so much fun. And I have an amazing group of people and team behind me supporting me. So I am happy to talk about passion and fear, and I would be happy to talk to anybody about passion and fear if that's something that you also struggle with. So next we're going to jump over to Rob, and he will talk about his blocker.
Hey, thank you, Gina, for taking us through that. So I'm going to talk about is guilt, which no accident that I'm talking about guilt, because the Jewish guys got to talk about guilt, right? Because it's kind of inbred into my life. Guilt was just something that I grew up with, and I think that's something that a lot of us grow up with. And unfortunately, I think sometimes it's used in our families because our parents want us to do certain things, so they guilt us into doing this or visiting them more, or, I know one of the things that my family used to guilt me on as a kid is you have to eat all the food because the kids in Russia are starving, or the kids in China, I forget which country it was. But it was always something that I had to do because of something else. And then I learned in life that you can also have guilt from being too hard on yourself. And I think a lot of that came from, for me, especially, Gina was talking about her childhood. And I think back to my childhood, and so many things that people told me that I should do differently, and I should do this and I should do that. And a lot of criticism. And that led me to feel guilty about not doing enough or not doing it good enough. And the thing about guilt is we all make mistakes. We all mess up. We all do things. But we have to let it go, and we can't live in the past. Because then once we do that, it becomes a huge, huge blocker, because then we get obsessed about it. You know, like when I was growing up, I made a lot of mistakes with money in my younger years. And so for years, I didn't let that go. And for years, I let that define me. And it did. It became a huge, huge blocker, which caused me to attract and do the wrong things. You know, unfortunately, when I was growing up, we had a lot of death in our family, and I felt like I never said the right things at the right time. And so there was just really always something to feel guilty about. Or even when I was growing up and I was coming out as gay, I felt guilty for that. And just became to the point where guilt just consumed me all the time. What I've learned, it's taken me a long time, is we have to let it go, and we have to get past it. And let's face it, guys, we're not perfect. We're humans. We're going to make mistakes, and we have to give ourselves grace. And sometimes we're our hardest on ourselves, and we have to learn to love ourselves and to know that if something happens, we can learn from it, and then we can make it different next time. So, like an example of, I was taking care of my dad when he had Alzheimer's, and when I moved back in with him to help take care of him. And I wanted to make sure that during the process, I was conscious with him. I was 100% with him, because I knew that when he passed away, I wanted to make sure that I had no guilt, like I did everything I could. And I was with him the moment he took his last breath. And at that moment, I felt 100% complete, because I knew that I did and said everything that I possibly could. And I acknowledged myself for that. Now, one of the things that we can do to help get us through guilt, and through a lot of things really, this really touches on a lot of areas, is integrity. You know, I used to think that I had the most integrity in the world. Hey, I've been in banking for most of my adult life, so I'm honest. I've worked with money forever and ever. So I always thought I had integrity until I realized that I didn't have integrity with myself. And when I first heard that at Ulapalooza from Dr. Troy, that really opened my eyes, because I never thought of it that way. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate to, we'll do anything for anybody. We will help anybody. We'll keep our word to anybody. But how often do we keep our word to ourselves? How often do we say, I'm going to start this diet on Monday, yada, 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 and then we don't? Or I'm going to put X amount of money in the bank, and we don't. Or we continue to make promises and goals, and we don't keep our word to ourselves. But how can we value our word to us if we're not keeping our own word? It's just like keeping it to anybody else in the world, and we leave us last. So one of the biggest things that's really helped me over the last year and a half is having that integrity with myself. And I have found that it has helped me strengthen all the other areas that I'm working on. And that's just as important as anything else. So we're going to turn over to Kevin. He can talk to us about his blockers. So thank you for listening about guilt and integrity.
Thanks very much, Rob. So I am lucky enough to talk about the blocker of anger. And the blocker of anger is something that I personally have actually had to deal with. So I'm just confessing that to you right off the bat. What makes you angry? Think about that just for a minute. When something happens, what really makes you angry? Is it maybe your own mistakes? Or is it that guy that just cut you off in traffic? Maybe it's a piece of technology that doesn't work like it's supposed to. You're on the way to work and you get a flat tire and your day is ruined. You're angry because now your car is not working properly and didn't get you to your appointment on time or to work. Or maybe it's simply just when unknown things happen that you're not expecting. And so you don't respond to it, you react to it, and you get angry about it. Well, I've learned that acceptance of your anger is, that's certainly it's a problem if you release it. And if you're exposing other people to your anger, and especially if you're venting it against them, it's not good. So acceptance of the problem is definitely key, that you have a problem with it and you need to alter how you're treating others, how you are treating yourself. Like for me, what makes me the most angry is when I make a mistake. Unfortunately, a big trigger for me is my own personal expectations. I want to be, perfect. And so if I can't do that, then I get mad at myself. And I had to realize that I'm never going to be perfect. And that struggling for perfection, like Gina said a while ago, is, not going to happen anyway. So why would I need to, worry about that and become frustrated with myself because I can't be perfect? But it was leading to high frustration for me before. Other times, it's maybe other people that are causing you to be angry, like that guy in traffic or that girl at work who is always gossiping about you and saying things that aren't true. You sometimes have to realize that you're just not in control of other people. And you being angry about it may actually be exactly what they're hoping to accomplish. So if you can actually learn to let it go and not be angry about it, you've totally taken away their power over you. Speaking of power, sometimes people will release anger as a result of actually feeling powerless. That seems very strange, doesn't it? Like powerless, you would be meek, you would think. But some people will actually release that in anger and they lash out against it of not being powerful, believing that somehow this outburst they have is actually making them powerful. When we all know that's just not the case. Again, anger released towards other people in inappropriate ways is totally detrimental to relationships. So let's think about some methods or some accelerators, accelerators, that might be helpful in diffusing your anger. Anger can be released in positive ways. If the emotion, then you may need to release it somehow. So one method I used is deep, slow breathing. Breathing in the fresh air. If you can go outside when you're angry and actually breathe in fresh air from the outside, and if you can feel the sun on your face, that generally has a very calming effect on me, and I think you'll find it does on you too. Also, try and think about, as you're deep breathing, what is it really that's causing me this frustration and this emotion of anger to well up inside of me? Is it one of the things we talked about before? What's the trigger? Is it my own personal expectations of how I should act, or maybe how others should act towards me? So trying to identify that and actually speak it and and define yourself what it is that's causing the problem can help you eliminate that as a trigger. Also, it's a good idea to utilize physical exercise every day if possible to release some extra adrenaline and to kind of cut the tension that you might be feeling, especially if you're stressed. So releasing that tension and setting a positive intention of how you're going to act towards other people is very, very important. An accelerator that can really help with diffusing anger is humility. When you have a sense of humility about yourself and you realize you're not the smartest person in the room, and you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, you take the pressure right off of yourself. And you're more likely to give grace to others because you realize, you know what, I'm making mistakes too. And that humility allows you to admit that to yourself. And when others might make a mistake, you're more likely to forgive them and give them grace and help them overcome that, sense of failure they might be feeling. Humility towards yourself is another way to forgive yourself. So if you're like me and you maybe had that sense of you wanted perfection all the time from yourself and you held yourself in such high regard that you couldn't make a mistake, oh, that was simply adding more stress and worry to my life. And when I finally realized that if I would just be more humble and give myself a break, eat a Kit Kat if necessary, take a break, especially when I make a mistake, and breathe that fresh air, it made all the difference in the world. Finally, seeking a deeper relationship with God has certainly helped me in my work to try and diffuse anger and be more humble. And I would offer it to you as a solution for you as well. Because when we try to imagine whatever just made us mad, the guy in traffic that cut us off, the computer that broke in the middle of our presentation work, some person that was maybe talking bad about us, and we try to imagine that from God's perspective, imagine how tiny and small that incident is from his worldview. And so when you realize that those little things don't really matter much and they don't amount to a hill of beans, as my dad used to say, then you can give yourself a break and be more humble and diffuse your anger. Next, Miss Colette is going to tell us about self-sabotage. Colette, your turn.
Okay, well, I love being sandwiched in between all of this greatness because there are so many great little nuggets. You would never know by hearing Kevin that he has issues with anger, right? Or Gina with fear. There's just so many battles each of us are fighting that we don't even know about. So I am going to talk to you about self-sabotage. And self-sabotage, the definition of self-sabotage is behaviors or thoughts that hold you back from achieving your goals and desires. So I don't know about you. Well, I do know about you because we all have what Gina compared to as God and the devil inside of each of us, right? I am constantly fighting that little voice in the back of my head on what to do, what to say, how to act constantly throughout my day. It's a huge blocker for me. And it seems we all seem to find a way to talk ourselves out of doing what we know we should be doing. Self-sabotage is just a huge way of letting that little stinky voice inside of our head control our thoughts and actions. I was listening to a couple of different things last night on self-sabotage, and I heard a great analogy saying that self-sabotage is basically a conflict with who you actually are versus who you believe you are. So you have these people who see you outside of yourself and who you actually are and who you are portraying your purpose and yourself, like Gina said earlier, to be. And then you have that little voice back there that's telling you you're not good enough, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that. And it's just a constant battle. So with self-sabotage, you want to try to think of the opposite things, not constantly focus on all of those negative thoughts, because that's just going to give you 2 steps backwards instead of your 2 steps forward in your purpose in life. So there was something else I wanted to say that was awesome last night. So many things. Self-sabotage is like, it's like all that garbage and all the things that you say to yourself that nobody else, you wouldn't say any of those things to anybody else. I mean, if you really truly think of what self-sabotage is, think of how you would treat other people. Would you say those kinds of things to other people? You know, if you were upset because you ate that brownie or you ate that big bowl of ice cream and you're trying to watch your weight and you are mad at yourself and you're calling yourself all these names and you're being ugly to yourself, would you say that to your young child that's sitting there next to you? No, you would never say those kinds of things. We are harder on ourselves than anybody else. Anybody else. So self-sabotage is a huge blocker for sure. So the opposite of self-sabotage is love. And love is one of those things. I have to read you this from the ULA book. And if you are new to ULA, you need to grab the book from any one of us. Ask any one of us. We can get you one of these books. But this was just classic. So I want to read you just a small little part here. Because love is one of those things where you hear it all the time. So it says, Phil says you can't hurry it. Paul says you can't buy it. Lionel thinks it's endless. And Bowie thinks it's modern. Meatloaf will do anything for it, and Def Leppard thinks it bites, and the B-52s want to build a shack for it. So there's all different kinds of ways that we talk about love. Love in songs and the way we love each other, and like Rob was saying, the way we love ourselves. I mean, the way we love ourselves is really what is the medicine to everything, because it's going to project out into the world. It's going to project out into how we treat others and how others in turn are going to treat us. So I have said this before, I am a teacher and I am still learning after 19 years. And this particular group I have this year is by far one of my favorite groups. They are so easy to love on, and they are so easy to return that love in return back to me that it makes my job super easy this year. So I want you to be thinking about not only how you love other people, whether they think they are deserving of love or not, but how they are going to receive that love. You know, because there's been many children that have been in my classroom that I try my best to just love on, and they're just not going to take it. They're not going to have it at that moment. Later on, typically they do come back and say great things, but in the moment it's hard. It's very hard to love them. And sometimes we feel that same way about ourselves. It's hard to love ourselves. So out of all the 2 battles, we want to make sure that we focus on that love, that accelerator of love, to really defeat and squash that self-sabotage. So I am going to pass it on to Miss Darla next.
Wow, you can see how all of these ULA blockers and accelerators just mesh and mingle, and we are all just like, oh yeah, I feel that. So I'm going to talk to you about being lazy and laziness. And when you think about living differently, there's no room for lazy. And it's a big deal. Our culture has sort of fostered laziness for many people. We used to have to get up out of our seat and go over to the TV and turn the channel. That was years and years ago. But it was like 4 steps and then 4 steps back, right? Now we have a remote control for everything. We have a remote control for the thermostat, for the lights, for the car. We can turn the car on before we walk out to the car. So it's just our culture is automated. And I love technology. I love efficiency of technology and all of the wonderfulness and the futuristic things that we can do. But we have to check ourselves and make sure that we're not just hanging out and letting life pass us by being lazy. And one way we can do that is by finding our passion, or really looking at what our life is and getting away from comparison and self-sabotage and letting that guilt go. So everything that everybody's already talked about, you guys, this is how you overcome. And all of us coaches, we're just like you. We have all of these things. Just because one of us is talking about one of these things doesn't mean I don't have all of them too. We all know that this is what most people struggle with. And so that's why we want you to know that we're here for you. And this is just part of life. But this is, when you get coaching, it's how we teach you to and guide you to overcome these blocks. And so discipline is one of the biggest ways that you can overcome laziness. And when you're checking out and it's your day off and you want to chill and lay in bed all day and not do anything, you need to really... One of the things that we can help you with is ready, set, go. And if I lay in bed all day, what is that going to do? Is that going to get me any closer to my ULA life? Nope, it's not. So ready, set, go, get your hiney out of bed. And then what all of us do is something not technology right now, but there's little 3x5 cards. They're not expensive. You can write down 3 things that you're going to do today that is really going to get you towards your goals. And one of the things that's really helped me with discipline is to do these cards every day. And on one side of the card, I put my stuff. Like this one has, oh, I don't want to read that one. That's not a fun one. I'm all about fun. So you guys got to have my list has to be fun. Okay, this one has laundry and grocery store, right? Because we all have to do that kind of stuff. This must have been on a Saturday or one of my days off. This is like what I have to do, and this is what I want to do. This is my passion. This is going to get me towards my ULA life. So it's a longer list on a day when I'm not doing my day job. Some days I really just have 3 things on my list. Like this day, might just have a few things. But every single day, I know that if I get up and I do my oranges, we call them, towards our ULA life, that, like Colette said, we could be 5 steps forward. And if I take a lazy day, or if I have an anger moment and I get 2 steps back, I'm still 3 steps ahead. So you guys got to give yourself some grace, right? None of us are perfect, and we don't want you to be either. We just are here to guide you, to help you get there. So what is your passion? What are your dreams? What do you want to do in life? And have you even, the very first thing is to identify what's stopping you. So what's blocking you? We have a couple more to go through here, but we'll let you figure out what blocks you, and then write it down in our comments and let us know what you guys struggle with, because we're all here. We get it. We know we all struggle with all of these anyway. So welcome to the club. But tell us what you found that, helps you get through a day or helps you overcome something too. So I'm going to pass it off to Wendy, but you guys give us some comments and let us know what your struggles are, and let us know how you get through things too. Ready, set, go. There you go, Wendy.
Thanks, Darla. I don't know about you guys, but I am picking up all of these wonderful tidbits and ideas. And as Darla just said, we all struggle with these same things as well. And this is like, coaches need coaching too. So we're all in here getting coached by each other as well. And it's so amazing to me. I just wrote down some great ideas. So thank you guys for sharing what you have and coming from your hearts. I am here today to share with you about the ULA blocker of envy. Now, envy is a bit of an insidious thing. And actually what I wanted to do was I looked up the difference between jealousy and envy, because many times jealousy and envy get intertwined or, exchanged for one another, but they actually are something very different. So jealousy describes a feeling of protectiveness or insecurity that you have over a rival or being replaced. So generally jealousy happens with at least 3 people. So you're jealous of your other 2 friends because they went out for coffee with you. So that's jealousy. Envy is a feeling of discontent or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions, qualities, or luck. It's a reaction to lacking something in our own lives. And envy is that internal longing that you feel for something that somebody else has. So I don't know, that kind of helped me understand the difference between jealousy and envy. And while jealousy is not a good thing either, I think envy can be very insidious. And in fact, Socrates said that envy is the ulcer of the soul. And I thought that that was really profound, because I think particularly in today's world, when we're all sharing our lives online, it's very easy to have amped up envy about other people who are posting about all the great things in their lives, their new car, their new house, the trip they've gone on, whatever that is for everybody else. We look at that and we're like, why don't I have that? Or they don't deserve that, I do. Or, just the fact that you all of a sudden feel that you are lacking something in your own life. And that's an awful feeling. And so what I want to read to you a little bit about what we say about envy when in our ULA program. Envy is looking at others' lives through the lens of longing rather than looking at our own lives through the lens of gratitude. And that can leave you vulnerable to envy. Remember, you're running your own race, and this life is uniquely yours, and my life is uniquely mine. This life, all the trials and the triumphs alike are, we all go through trials, we all go through triumphs. And it's just really hard sometimes, I know, when it seems like everybody else is triumphing. But even those that are sharing triumphs, they've all gone through trials too. We've all gone through the fire. And just because things are going well for us right now, we've come through a fire at some point or other. It doesn't matter who we are. Every single one of us has. So I wanted to share with you what the best thing to help you get past envy is, and that is gratitude. Now, gratitude, I can tell you, has changed my whole life perspective. I have a mentor that really taught me about gratitude and how important it was. And when we come from gratitude, it changes our whole perspective on envy. So what I mean by coming from gratitude is that when we are grateful at all times, through even the tough times, all of a sudden we're coming from gratitude about everything. And when you start to live gratitude and just think of gratitude even when you're having a bad day. Let's say you've got a Kevin problem and you're angry. If you start coming at that problem from gratitude, and you just stop and you sit down and you write out 5-10 things that you're grateful for. And you know what? It might be things that are really simple. Maybe you can't be grateful for that person in the moment, but what you are grateful for is, I am grateful that the sun shone today. I am grateful that I have a house to live in. I am grateful that I had food for my belly. I am grateful that this pen that I am writing with is writing. I am grateful for that. And when you start to come from that place of gratitude, it changes your whole perspective about everything. So that's my tip for you, is when you're in a bad place, or you're angry with somebody, or you're just not, any of these blockers are in your way, gratitude can actually help you through any one of them. So I encourage you, type it out on your phone, write down at least 5 things that you are grateful for, because there's always something in every situation, everything that you can be grateful for. So the funny thing about, not the funny thing about this, but the great thing about being grateful is that that is the very, one of the cornerstones of ULA. We say, have faith, be grateful, go get your ULA life. That's how important gratitude is. So I really encourage you, if you haven't started using gratitude in your life, I really encourage you, please, 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 go to the dollar store and get yourself a little notebook or put it on your phone and start with gratitude. I think you will find a huge shift in your life and in your mindset. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Coach Amy.
Hi guys. So the ULA blocker that I'm talking about today is focus, or lack of. There's 2 focus blockers. One is misdirected focus. I think we all can really know what to do about that one. Just meaning that we don't focus on the things that we need to get our stuff done. But when we talk about lack of focus, it's not one that I think we pay a whole lot of attention to. So I had this whole thing prepared that I wanted to talk about focus or lack of in regards to social media, because I think that's a big pit for everybody. But then I started reading this book with my daughter last night. It's called Focused. It's about a girl with ADHD and her struggles. And I am neurotypical, but my husband has severe ADHD, and so does my 10-year-old. And so I got my daughter this book because it's time for her to have her 4th quarter book report. I thought it would be interesting for her to read a book about somebody with ADHD. So we're reading through this first chapter last night, and it starts, this girl's just describing her day. She says, I have 45 minutes to finish 5 word problems, shower, get ready for school, and eat. I should have done all of my homework last night, like probably everybody else in my class did. But the word problems this year are a lot harder than the ones we had to do last year. And I guess I thought that when I woke up this morning, the questions would make more sense. I was wrong. They're still impossible. And even though I'm the worst at math, I know that I have only 5 out of 10 answers. My best case grade is a 50. In other words, an F. I can't let that happen. My phone is buzzing. It's my friend. I'm going to have to ignore him. She goes on to talk about this, walks her through her whole day. She has this plan. She starts to get hungry. Oh, I'm going to go eat. Then I'll be able to do my homework. And you just see how she falls down the slippery slope of not being able to get her work done. And as a neurotypical person, I'm reading this first chapter to my 10-year-old and absolutely identifying everything that this girl is saying to my daughter, but realizing it also applies to me. So I think that it's a really good lesson in how we can just get caught up in how we let our lives happen to us versus going through our day with intentionality. Like, you know, I'm working really hard with my daughter to make our mornings more easier to get out the door by getting our things ready the night before. Lay out your clothes for tomorrow, pack your backpack, make sure your homework's in your backpack, get your lunchbox out, make sure it's empty and ready to get filled in the morning. And those are, I think, lessons that we all can do as far as trying to work on our focus and bringing that more into balance. That also does apply to what I was going to talk about before, which is social media. We all, tend to use social media poorly. We just fall into the pit of scroll, like, and let other things fall by the wayside. Some things that we could do is just setting boundaries around our time, whether it's social media or anything else. Again, setting those intentions of getting your things ready the night before, meal planning, which Gina is great at, and she's done some great videos on how we can do meal planning, eating with intentionality, making sure that we block out time for the things that we need to get done so that we don't lose focus throughout the day. One way to do that is to have, don't go on social media until 10 a.m. No phones at the dinner table. Social media is not all bad. It's a good way to connect to community. We can showcase our creativity on social media. We spread social awareness with our hashtags. It enhances our income opportunities if you have businesses like ours where we coach or whatever else you're doing. And it also helps us stay connected with family and friends, which is super important considering, we've all been on lockdown for over a year now. It's just finding a balance between all of the things that we need to work on and make sure that we don't let a lack of focus derail us from those things that we need to get done, which is also another reason why those 3x5 cards that Darla talked about are so very important. They really are life changing. If you can get into that habit, when you get into that habit, making sure that you're getting your stuff done that you need to get done, your Skittles and your oranges, as we call them. So talking about an accelerator that is the counterbalance to a lack of focus is wisdom. So the actual definition of wisdom is the soundness of an action or decision with regard to the application of experience, knowledge, and good judgment. It includes intelligence, understanding, and insight. But it often gets confused with knowledge. So knowledge is knowing something. It's something that you've learned that you're able to recite, which is different than wisdom. I think wisdom is a lot more intuitive than that. So the ways that you can bring wisdom to your 7 F's of ULA is through personal reflection, just always asking yourself, why are you setting this goal? Why do you need to do this thing? And get to the core of what it really means to get that done for you. How is it going to help you? That's a good example would be like for finances. None of us want a budget. None of us want to, work on our finances. It's scary. It's overwhelming. But if you can ask yourself, why do I need to work on my finance? Really pinpoint for yourself how having bad finances are affecting your life, then you're going to be able to focus more on finance, understanding that there's a reason for what you're doing, and it'll make it easier for you to get it done. You also want to seek guidance and knowledge from others. So we talk a lot about, or even Kevin had mentioned, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I've always heard, and it might have been from the ULA guys, that if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find a new room. And that's because you really want to learn from people. So if there's something that you're working on, whether it's your fitness, your finance, your family, and there's someone that that is just rocking it in that area, then you should spend more time with them. Dedicate, make a commitment, figure out ways that you can hang out with that person more and learn by their example. You also want to make sure that you're growing from your mistakes. It's super easy for us to make a mistake and try to brush it aside and forget about it and just move on. But really, that's the wrong thing to do. You need to, totally lost my train of thought there for a second. So when you make a mistake, you really need to do a root cause analysis, figure out, I made this mistake. How did it happen? Why did it happen? And what can I do to make sure that it doesn't happen again? And that way we're not going through this cycle of, just repeating the same mistake. Another good way to add wisdom to your life is to practice humility. We all know we have imperfections. We should admit it to ourselves and know that we can't know everything. We're all here to learn together and help each other. And again, just reviewing the past actions and outcomes, kind of the same thing as growing from your mistakes. But you want to do this every time you make an important decision. If you find yourself making the same mistake multiple times, make sure that you're going over past actions and outcomes to make sure that when you do make an important decision, it's not just history repeating itself, that there's a reason for it. And that is it for my blockers and accelerators.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you to all of the coaches tonight who have shared with us about blockers and accelerators. I hope that you all are aware now more about what blockers may be affecting you in your life and what accelerator you can best use to overcome those blockers and actually score that touchdown in your life so that your life is your ULA life. All right. So we're going to end tonight's broadcast by all of us saying our famous saying together for ULA on the count of 3. Coaches, are you ready? So on 3, we're going to say it all together, right? 1, 2, 3. Be
grateful.
Have faith.
And
Go,
Go
Coach.
get your life.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.